exactly the distinction. Britt Hume, thank you for that. Things may be the craziest in the northwest part of the country, but in Washington, they're not that much better. Congresswoman Maxine has moved on from predicting President Trump's impeachment to claiming that it's appalling that impeachment hasn't occurred already.
I believe this president should be impeached. I don't care what others say about it's too soon, we don't know, we think. I think that they're letting the American public down by not delving deeper into what is going on with Jerry Kushner and this back-channeling about the lies and his failure to disclose that he had had these meetings. The same thing with Sessions, failure to disclose about the meetings. What more do we need?
Don Calloway is a Democratic strategist and former state representative from Missouri, and he joins us in the studio. Don, thanks a lot for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So what more do we need? I don't know, facts?
I think she's armed with plenty of facts, and I think she's presenting a substantial case that the House should probably begin with the sincere and the vigorous investigative proceedings that could possibly lead to impeachment. I certainly am not calling for the president's impeachment, but I don't think that she or Congressperson Al Green from Houston, Texas, are completely out of line for suggesting that that's probably potentially in the universe of what could happen at this point.
She's saying, she's not just calling for it, she's demanding it. She's saying we already know what we know, when of course we don't know any such thing. And she's saying that the American people will be disappointed. Now, I guess why this jumped out at me is because she has a documented history of applauding mob violence, race violence, during the LA riots 25 years ago. And so statements like that strike me as kind of scary when they come from someone who, applauded the beating of Reginald Denny, as she in effect did.
Well, we don't know that she. I'm well aware of the Denny things, and we know that she visited with the young man who did what he did that led to Reginald Denny's death years later. We know that she did visit with his family, and I'm not defending that action by Congresswoman Waters 25 years ago because it's indefensible. But the reality is that for those of us who participate in the public sphere, like you and I do, over a substantial amount of time, we all have some things that we probably wish we hadn't said, done, or participated in, and I'm sure she would like to have a get back. But she does have a substantial
record. Evidence of that? I mean, I guess that's the thing.
But she has a substantial record of public service as a civil rights advocate, as a civil liberties advocate, and as a consumer protection advocate that has pushed this country to a better place.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any of that history at all. Well, I know she came really close to an ethics charge because apparently her husband got rich based on government policy.
No, that's not true. She was investigated by the ethics committee, and it's good that you bring that up because she was completely cleared of any wrongdoing. And essentially, that's all
by her peers.
No, by her peers in Congress. And essentially, that's what she's asking that President Trump do is submit to a proper inquiry, ethics inquiry, and have the opportunity to present his side and be exonerated, just like she was. No wrongdoing.
So what? I mean, I guess I'll just make 2 points. One, I'm worried that she has become a folk hero on the left because she is so intemperate and unhinged and outrageous and willing to say anything, and because she's a hater, and they're looking for a hater now to represent them.
Now, I'm not going to agree with that, Tucker. I think that she has a lot of the appeal that President Trump has to his base, which is that she's willing to say things objectively and in a very blunt way without a lot of the kind of circumspect politician speak.
Objectively?
Well, she's willing to be very blunt about her positions, and much in the way that President Trump had appealed to his base.
You said that and look, I believe in forgiveness, by the way. I'm a flawed person, and some of my closest friends are very flawed people.
Including me.
Yeah, but look, when you go and applaud what she applauded, and she went, and when the other defendants were acquitted in the beating of Reginald Denny, who was delivering building materials for low-income housing. I mean, the guy was totally innocent, except he was the wrong color, and he was beaten almost to death. She's never apologized for that I know of.
Again, we're not defending anything that...
But shouldn't she?
We're not defending what the guys did.
Robert Byrd was a Klan recruiter, okay? He was the longest-serving Democratic senator. He apologized, and I, for one, was willing to say, you apologize? Okay, we can move on, but she never has.
I don't know that she hasn't, frankly, but I do know that we should extend to Maxine Waters the same grace that we've extended to that we've asked that we extend to the Attorney General, who was deemed too racist to be a federal judge in the 1980s. We should extend to her the same grace that we extend to the president, who is objectively advocated for sexual assault of women over the years and has participated in racist activity documented from the 1970s up through now when he led the birther movement.
Yeah.
So we should, all of us are...
Look, we're talking about Maxine Waters here.
We are,
and she is uncritically accepted by the left precisely because of her lunacy. And I guess I would challenge your assertion that she's got an impressive legislative record. I've been here almost the entire time she's been here. Well, I don't know that there are a lot of water bills that are improving my life, are there?
Absolutely. Listen, my firm participates vigorously in the financial services space and in the corporate finance space, and she has absolutely been a leader, a bipartisan leader on consumer protection, has put this country in a much better place so that corporations and banks don't take advantage of you and I and the little guys. And I think she's very proud. She should be very proud.
Well, I thought her
of
husband was getting
consumer
rich from a bank.
Again, that did not happen. She was cleared of any wrongdoing.
He didn't get rich from that?
One United Bank in Los Angeles, her husband was on the board of trustees. One United was one of the dozens of thousands of banks throughout this country which participated in the temporary asset relief program.
Right.
And she was absolutely correct and cleared by any congressional ethics probe that she did no wrongdoing in that. He did not get rich. He's on the board of trustees. Should they not have participated in the same program that thousands of banks in this country, community banks that help
your family's profiting, you should recuse yourself.
That's not what happened. She was found not to have done any wrongdoing. So
final point. Would you say that if she's coming out there and calling for the President of the United States impeachment less than 6 months after his election in a free and fair democratic election, that she should at least give a bullet points of the crimes she alleges he's committed, and she hasn't?
Well, I think that she has alleged the same things that people on both parties have said, is that we need to have a free and open and fair inquiry into a number of things that rise to the level of being objectively questionable. Okay. The back channels with Russia, the continued ongoing meetings with Russia that were not on the record.
None of that's a crime.
We need to talk about it. We need to have a free and fair investigation.
Holy smokes, that's all we're talking about.
But we need to have a sanctioned investigative process. So.
Don, thanks.
Always a pleasure, Tucker. Thank you.
Jared Kushner's attempted back-channeling with Russia sent the media into a frenzy. Has just noted that behavior, you may not like it, doesn't appear to break a law, and it's, by the way, not that unusual. The Obama administration did it. Again, not a defense, but some perspective, please. Up ahead, we'll talk to a former diplomat who says the press is becoming consumed with paranoia. That a new report says hundreds of thousands of people have been able to vote in Virginia despite not being American citizens. Wait a second. Hasn't the press told us for years that voter fraud never happens? Looks like it has. We've got details. Almost every week we highlight media hysteria over Russia, sometimes every night, and every time they apparently take it as a challenge to become more hysterical. This week, from Salon.com, quote, does Vladimir Putin really own Donald Trump? It's more likely than you think. From Foreign Policy, which used to be a real publication, Jared Kushner's growing stench of treason, punishable by death, by the way. From Slate, the end is nigh. The New York Times, meanwhile, wrote a lengthy story about administration efforts to open a back channel with Russia. Doubtless you heard about it. But the paper took 16 paragraphs before mentioning a key fact. Setting up a back channel is perfectly legal and, by the way, has happened before. Former New Hampshire Governor John Sununu called out some of this for what it is. Watch.
The only discomfort I have is with folks in the media trying to create a venality without having the courage to specifically tell me what the venality that I should be concerned about is.
You should be concerned if there was collusion. And that's what
I don't see any evidence of collusion. Do you?
No. That's
okay, so that should end your reporting right there. You should put an exclamation point after you know.
Understood, but we're at the beginning of the investigation. So what?
You're 7 months into the investigation.
One anchor honest enough to say, no, I don't see any evidence of collusion. Good for her. Wayne Mary is a former American diplomat to Russia, knows a lot about the country. He joins us tonight. This does seem like the governor's question is the key one, which is what's the crime being alleged here? Do you see it?
Well, there are a lot of allegations, and a lot of allegations based on leaks, which have not yet been substantiated, if they ever will be.
Right.
I mean, some of the accusations are important if they prove to be true. But let us keep in mind that every new U.S. administration makes contact with foreign governments before it comes into office. I mean, every administration does that. That's part of the transition process. I might also note as an American diplomat that we do the same thing with our embassies with incoming governments in other countries. I mean, after elections in countries that I was posted to, we were very closely in touch with the politicians who were going to be coming into office, often before they actually were in office.
What I find hilarious about the story is that Jared Kushner apparently suggested speaking in some other venue, perhaps in a secure Russian-controlled venue, because he feared, the Trump people feared, they would be surveilled by U.S. intel agencies and that information would be leaked, which of course it was. The conversation was being surveilled, and indeed it was leaked, hence this story. So, like, maybe it was a real concern.
Well, I think that what Mr. Kushner is alleged to have proposed to Sergei Kislyak, the Russian ambassador, needs to try to be firmed up a good deal here. Was he talking about having a means of communication, or was he talking about actually making that communication part of a Russian clandestine activity? That would be very different. And at least the leaks, the allegations that we've seen, is that Ambassador Kislyak was very cautious and very unresponsive to what was being proposed.
Right, because they're, of course, totally paranoid, like a lot of diplomats are. So this is now an article of faith in Washington that Russia hacked our election, whatever that means, that the Trump people are somehow in bed with the Russians, puppets of Putin. True or not, that has real-world consequences, does it not, for our country and its relationship with Russia?
It certainly does. I mean, the Russians increasingly are using the word schizophrenia to describe official Washington nowadays. Partly the distance between Capitol Hill and the White House on policy, some of the struggles going on within the administration. And they're quite reluctant, I think, to commit themselves to almost any kind of a dialogue with the United States, even if we're prepared for one. But I think you have to keep in mind that we have not yet had the first meeting between the American president and the Russian president. That's likely to happen in early July on the margins of one of the big summit meetings. But so far, we have not yet even initiated the kind of dialogue with Russia that any president since Harry Truman would have had by this point in their administration.
So maybe that's the point. So Russia experts I know in Washington believe that part of the purpose of this was an effort to derail Trump's planned détente with Russia. There are people in Washington who were against that for a bunch of different reasons, and so they hamstrung it. Do you think that that's plausible?
Well, Russophobia is one of the few things that is really bipartisan in the United States today. You see it on Capitol Hill in both houses, both parties. You also have to keep in mind that what I would call the policy elite in the United States, whether liberal or conservative, neoliberal or neoconservative, are really consumed with anger against Russia for reasons which to me strike me as really quite irrational, particularly this demonization of Vladimir Putin. I mean, Ronald Reagan never did that kind of thing. Ronald Reagan never called for regime change in Moscow. He was interested in regime behavior change, and he knew that to change another regime's behavior, you have to have some kind of dialogue with it.
He was probably a puppet of Andropov, I would imagine. Well, just kidding. Yep. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
A college professor allegedly hit a Trump supporter in the head with a bike lock. Now he's being charged with felonies. The professor's attorney will join us next to explain what exactly happened. One of the most violent figures at the rally was a masked man who went around smashing several Trump supporters in the head with a metal bicycle lock. Now, with some assistance from the amateur sleuths on the website 4chan, police have identified former Diablo Valley College professor Eric Clanton as the attacker. He's been charged with multiple felonies. Dan Siegel is representing him. He's a longtime lawyer, and he joins us tonight. Dan, thanks a lot for coming on.
Sure, happy to be here, Tucker.
So in your statement before the judge, you said that, in effect, there was a lot going on, a lot of shoving, a lot of racist, homophobic language in the air, suggesting, I think, that this guy was provoked. I want to put up for our viewers who haven't seen this a video of one of the assaults that took place. You'll notice, there he is right there. That apparently is your client. And he smashed a guy in the head. Oh, there he is. Who had his hands up and was not shoving anybody. So when you said that there was shoving, I mean, that did not apply to the guy you're apparently representing. Why would you try to excuse an assault like that?
First of all, I'm not excusing anything. You're jumping to conclusions, Tucker. We have a presumption of innocence in this country, and I assume that you, as a patriotic American, believe in it. There's an accusation that my client did certain things that are against the law. None of that has been proven, it hasn't even been proven that he was present at that event, much less that he hit anyone, much less that he did so without justification. So the evidence will have to come in
but you're kind
from
of dodging my
someplace other than a website.
Okay. It's not a I mean, that I don't think you're contesting the reality of that video or its veracity. You're saying the guy in it is not your client. But when you spoke to the judge, you said, look, people were saying unpleasant things. What does that have to do with the assault that took place? Why is that relevant to anything?
I think there was a lot of anger at the demonstration on April 15. These alt-right people were using Nazi and KKK salutes, waving a flag that has Nazi and KKK symbols on it. People didn't like that. There was yelling back and forth. What happened beyond that, I think, needs to be proven in court. I don't think there is proof that my client attacked anyone.
Okay, but you're totally missing my point, which is your job as a lawyer, presumably, is to argue my guy wasn't even there, as you said. He didn't do that. But somebody did do that, and we just watched a video of it, whether it's your client or not. Why does it matter what people were saying? No slogan, no flag is an excuse to hit someone in the face with a bicycle lock, and you seem to be suggesting otherwise.
You know, I'm really not. I don't believe that it's appropriate to use force or deadly force against someone who is not themselves involved in some sort of wrongful activity. Maybe it's not appropriate at all. But I think that you are, without really looking into it, are assuming that these 4chan people have produced some legitimate evidence of an assault.
Well, there is. I mean, this video is evidence of assault, and it's legitimate. Whether or not it was your client is the outstanding question. But I'm much more interested in the growing tolerance on the left for political violence and the excuses that people seem to make, including the one that you just appeared to make, for it. When you say they were waving Nazi flags, who's not opposed to that? I'm totally opposed to that. But that's a very different thing that's protected by the First Amendment. Hitting someone in the head and assaulting him is not. And so I don't know why you'd even bring that up except to excuse it.
I'm not bringing it up to excuse it. I'm saying that I'm not assuming that the snippet of video which you played demonstrates what occurred. You know, I believe I've seen the same video a dozen times, and it lasts for all of about 10 seconds. You don't know what occurred beforehand that led to whatever we saw on the video. So, yeah, I agree. There's no excuse for using deadly force against peaceful protesters, whether they're conservative or right-wing or left-wing.
I'm totally missing. Like, what could possibly be on that video that we haven't seen that would excuse that behavior? Like, think of something. Just make something up that would explain that behavior.
I don't have to make something up. You know, there's a law of self-defense in this country which allows you to use reasonable force to protect people or to protect yourself. Now, we've been at these rallies where these alt-rightists have stabbed people. We had the incident in Portland, Oregon just the other day. So for you to suggest that these right-wingers are peaceful supporters of the First Amendment is ridiculous.
But that's totally been debunked. The guy who's been charged with the 2 murders in Portland was not an alt-right guy. He was not a Trump supporter. He was a Bernie Sanders supporter and a Jill Stein supporter.
Oh,
so, like,
come on. You know, he yells at this woman wearing a headscarf, and then he gets up in court today and says, I'm not a terrorist.
Maybe you should do a little research before you go popping off on television. It's his statement, not mine. It's not a close call. He says, I did not vote for Trump. I support Bernie Sanders and Jill Stein. Now, the guy looks like a wacko to me, but to lay it at the feet of Trump supporters is just wrong by his own description.
I guess we should believe everything the guy says. I agree with you on one thing. He's clearly a wacko of sorts. You know, there was a protest up in Sacramento 2 months ago where 9 people were stabbed by these right-wingers. So we're not pretending that this is a peaceful protest in support of the Constitution.
We're looking at a video. I mean, this is like grotesque. This is like upside down world. We're looking at a video of a guy who you apparently, you say you're not, others say you are representing against felony charges, who's a leftist, who is hitting a guy who's not doing anything in the video, and it's long enough to assess that, and you're saying the real problem is something else that happened somewhere else? I mean, we're looking at video of a leftist hitting a guy.
You're looking at 10 seconds of video. There's not proof that this was Professor Clanton in that video. And again, you're not looking at what happened before that assault or apparent assault.
Okay, so the guy who was standing with someone else in between him was somehow attacking the guy in the black mask with a bike lock in his hand. Pardon me if I don't find that plausible. Really quickly, is your client saying he wasn't there? Is that his position?
He's saying that he is innocent of the charges. He's relying on the well-established principle of American law that he is innocent until proven guilty.
No one contests that.
And that it is the responsibility of the prosecution to introduce evidence
Was he there or not?
and prove that he is guilty.
Was he at the rally?
That will come out in court.
Okay, we'll be watching. Dan, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
As you know, voter fraud never happens. It's never happened in this country, not one time. That's what the press tells you to make sure we never pass any laws aimed at stopping it. Fortunately, someone went and actually investigated it. A new report says thousands of people just in the Commonwealth of Virginia were able to vote, even though they were not American citizens. We have the report, and that's next. Time for tonight's reality check. With all the media hand-wringing about Russian meddling in American politics, you'd think the prospect of non-citizens literally voting in our elections would be a greater concern. That's foreign meddling if there ever was any. But as you know, it's not. And instead, the same press claims that illegal voting never, ever happens, and you're an idiot and a bad person if you think otherwise. Now, a new study shows that's a lie, like so many they tell. The Public Interest Legal Foundation says that more than 5,000 people in the state of Virginia alone successfully registered to vote despite being foreign citizens and therefore banned from voting. J. Christian Adams is the president and general counsel of the Public Interest Legal Foundation, for whom we are grateful, and he joins us tonight. So I know this isn't true because it's never happened in American history, right?
Yeah, voter fraud's a myth, Tucker.
Yeah.
Didn't you hear that?
I have heard that, yeah.
This is the real foreign influence in American elections. The system is breaking down where foreigners are getting on American voter rolls and, as we documented, casting ballots by the thousands. And remember, these 5,000 plus aliens that we found on the rolls were only caught by accident. They were caught because they sort of self-reported themselves. So that means there's a lot more out there.
How do they self-report themselves?
Well, when they originally registered to vote, they said they were a citizen. When they renewed their driver's license under motor voter, they told the truth the second time. But plenty aren't telling the truth the second time. They're just staying on the voter rolls without being caught.
So the most basic charge of any government is to preserve the sanctity of its election. So I'm sure the government of the state of Virginia must have just stopped this immediately, right?
Yeah, we had to file 3 separate federal lawsuits at the Public Interest Legal Foundation to even get the data. Governor McAuliffe, his election lackey, Edgardo Cortez, they did everything they could to stonewall us from getting the facts. We eventually got the facts, and we found that people were actually marking, no, I'm not a citizen, and still getting registered to vote in Virginia.
Now, what would their motive be for hiding that information from the public?
Well, it shows how bad the problem is in Virginia, which, of course, is a swing state. And when you have elections in Virginia, some statewide races being decided by a couple hundred votes, and yet you have tens of thousands of aliens potentially on the rolls. 7,000 votes were cast by just these 5,000 people we caught. That makes a difference when it comes to American elections.
Well, for sure. And the assumption is these people are voting Democrat by and large.
We don't know that, but we know that the system...
Clearly, McAuliffe's assumption, or he would crack down on it.
And he vetoed several bills this year that would have fixed it. He vetoed citizenship verification. He doesn't even want election officials to have access to the people who get out of jury duty by saying, I'm not an American citizen. He vetoed a bill that would have used that tool to keep the voter rolls clean.
So they're actively trying to allow illegals to vote.
Yeah, they would have turned this information over to us without having to go to federal court 3 times. They would have given us this information to show us the extent of the problem, but they're hiding the ball.
So last year, the majority of driver's licenses issued in the state of California went to illegal aliens because that's the law there. I mean, what's the potential for voter fraud in a state where people here illegally get driver's licenses?
California is an example where alien voting makes a huge difference, and the system is so corrupt in California that I'm afraid it might be almost beyond hope, because alien voting matters in lots of places. Florida, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Texas. These are places where it makes a difference that you're not enforcing your voter rolls.
Can the Justice Department jump on this, and why wouldn't they?
Well, the Justice Department under President Obama has been on the other side.
Of course.
They've actually been opposing citizenship verification laws in Kansas, Georgia, and Alabama. We've had to take them to federal court right here in D.C. to try to get those state laws agreed to and allowed to take place.
Because those laws would suppress non-citizen voting.
Yeah, that's what they like to say. It suppresses votes of illegal voters.
They're know why I'm laughing. It's horrifying. This is elected officials would behave that way. It's actually kind of shocking, I think. J. Christian Adams, thank you for that.
Thanks, Tucker.
Well, actress, comedian, and of course CNN host Kathy Griffin didn't want anybody thinking she likes Trump. Not that anyone did. So she snapped a pretty gory photo to show her displeasure. It is weird. It's disgusting, actually. It may be the weirdest story of the day. I don't know. We'll find out in Top That. We saved the weirdest for last. A lot of strange news out there. So to determine what the strangest story of the day, our Top That panel joining us tonight, Catherine Lyons, managing editor at Famous DC, and Lisa Booth, columnist for the Washington Examiner. Welcome to you both. Catherine, you first.
Just want to know one thing. What does it take to order a pizza these days without any problems?
I don't know a lot.
I do it every Friday night.
$100 million lawsuit. That's what it takes. One guy in Michigan, a Muslim, was ordering a halal pizza, so absolutely no pork.
Okay.
And what he got back was a pork pepperoni pizza, and he decided to give Little Caesars a big problem.
$100 million.
It's a lot of pizza.
For bad pepperoni.
Bad pepperoni.
So this strike, I mean, this is obviously a shakedown. In fact, the lawyer in this case, we invited him on tonight, and he initially agreed, but then said no. But I think he's been involved in a couple of these different cases. But I guess it raises the question, how bad could a pizza be that you deserve $100 million compensation?
I think the real story here is that guy knew what pepperoni was made out of.
Oh, he ordered it knowing it was pepperoni?
No, he ordered the halal pizza, and they told him there was no pork in it. And then he got sick off of it, and that's how he knew that there was something wrong with it.
I'll be totally, I mean, look, I'm not insulting anyone's religious beliefs. I understand some people don't eat pork, and that's totally fine. But I bet you anything he loved it, because there's never been a person who didn't like pepperoni.
Or Little Caesars.
It's just a fact, exactly right.
Well, would have been better if
that?
it was Domino's, but that's just me. Yeah, I think I can beat that. But look, this is something that I'm actually very outraged about, Tucker. I'm sure you've heard about Kathy Griffin, photos surfacing of her holding up a bloody, decapitated head of the President of the United States, President Trump, right there. And this is in the same vein as what we've seen from ISIS with American journalists killed, Christians as well. But what this represents is it really a double standard, Tucker? Because can you imagine if this was Dennis Miller? We're talking about 130-something days into President Obama's administration, and you had a conservative comedian like Dennis Miller holding up a picture of President Obama's head. He would never work a day in his life again. She has been under contract, I believe, with CNN. She's done the New Year's Eve special with them since 2007. To my understanding, they haven't put a statement out about this condemning the pictures that she took. I also looked at Brian Stelter's Twitter handle, a media critic for CNN. I've not seen anything from him as well. And it's also hypocritical of Kathy Griffin and also what we've seen from people like Stephen Colbert, because they want to condemn this president and act outraged about things he says and does. But then they do things like this, or they make the comments that Stephen Colbert did. I will note, too, Tucker, that she did apologize, and I think we've got it for you.
Hey, everybody, it's me, Kathy Griffin. I sincerely apologize. I am just now seeing the reaction of these images. I'm a comic. I crossed the line. I moved the line. Then I crossed it. I went way too far. The image is too disturbing. I understand how it offends people. It wasn't funny. I get it. I've made a lot of mistakes in my career. I will continue. I asked your forgiveness, taking down the image, going to ask the photographer to take down the image, and I begged for your forgiveness. I went too far. I made a mistake, and I was wrong.
Well, I find the apology a lot more upsetting than the original image.
Well, and I think the question is that going to be enough?
Yeah, and what about her employer? You win. That's over the top. But you come a very close second with your $100 million pepperoni.
I'll eat my sorrows and pizza.
You will eat your sorrows and pizza.
I respect any stories about pizza.
You get the runners-up trophy. Thank you both very much, Kathy. We'll be right back.